Hello, everyone. This is your week 5 webinar, and it's a commentary. And most of this webinar is going to be composed of getting you ready to do your activities, 5A and 5B, the participation activities. So I want to comment on some of the items that were in the slide deck that is in your topic 5 Blackboard session that were prepared by Dr. Powers. And I'll go through that to emphasize some of the things that are going on, but I'm mainly going to focus on the participation pieces of 5A and 5B. All right, so here we go. Right now, there's a slide in there that talks about functions of operations, and I wanted to emphasize that this is a big part of understanding management and how to do effective management. So that I'll kind of relate some of my experience around this in terms of forecasting. I've done a lot of business plans for small business and medium-sized businesses over the years. And what I found out is that very little of these organizations, especially the small companies, do forecasting. And forecasting will make or break a company because it has so many implications. One is that if you don't forecast enough, then your customers are dissatisfied and they go to other alternatives and most times don't come back. If you don't forecast, if you forecast too much, then you're left with inventory. And we've got managing inventory down here, but take a look at this statistic. Is that inventory costs make up 35 to 65% of product unit cost, and that's what we call working capital. So that you can have a lot of money tied up in your business that is really, it's going nowhere. So think of it when it comes to managing inventory. What do you need? Well, you need a larger building. You need security for that building. You need more insurance for that building. You need to heat that building. You need more personnel to operate inside of that building. So that the more inventory that you have, the more working capital that you need to be able to make that business work. And that adds on to the cost of the unit cost of the product or service that gets transferred to the customer, which may make you not competitive in that market. So it's really important to understand how inventory has an impact on your business and how managing inventory is absolutely key, and it's tied to forecasting. So that's a big piece to understand. And then capacity planning, you really focus on how you make profit is to drop your unit costs of production. And that's done through capacity planning. So if you have oversized equipment, then you're paying more money to be able to produce. If you have undersized equipment, well, then you won't be able to keep up the customer demand. And overall, what you're doing is, from an economies of scale, is to be able to drop that unit cost as much as you possibly can so that you're competitive in the market. And the other thing you have to consider as well is economies of scope. So that if you're producing different products and you need different functions to produce that product, how you bring those functions together makes a big impact on your costs and your capabilities and your quality, so that it's all in capacity planning. In some cases, that's where you get into make or buy, and sometimes it pays off a lot more to be able to go out and outsource some of the capability to be able to keep the costs down. So that's key. Scheduling is everything. It's market timing, availability. It really impacts customer satisfaction. If you're not there with the right amount of inventory to be able to satisfy customer requirements, they're unhappy. And I'm going to talk about the service profit chain in the next slides or so that you get a sense of how this all comes together for the customer. And then production processes. Well, it's just as important to have your employees feeling good about the work, feeling part of the organization, understanding that they're part of the company vision, and that translates into good working standards, which translates into better quality, more productivity, better efficiency, and better effectiveness. And at the end of the day, it's profitability and doing the right things right for the company. So production processes are just absolutely key. And quality assurance is just another layer of capability to be able to make you competitive, because it's all about competitive advantage. And if you could maintain a level of quality that's superior to your competitors, then you're in the zone to be able to maintain a market and sustain selling in that market. So that's key. And now I go to the other side and I talk about employee motivation and training. I kind of alluded to that, but it's all about productivity. It's all about your employees feeling fulfilled, and it's all about employee satisfaction. And again, in the next slide, I'm going to show you how this all comes together. The location of facilities is a key item or a key aspect of operations management. The closer you are to your customer footprint, the more effective you're going to be in delivering on time, delivering within a low cost, and so that it all comes together to be able to make you more competitive. Buying materials in today's world, we're talking about supply chains. So if you don't understand supply chains, you're not going to be able to find the best ways of sourcing raw materials to be able to produce your product or service offerings, and then how to get to market. So that's really key. And then the facility layout itself, it could be very impactful if you don't have the proper layout, because what happens then is you have inefficiencies of operation. You have piles of inventory, or what I call work in process inventory that's not completed, that's all piled up because you don't have the right layout to manage your process to be able to get to the final product to support your customers. So this is a very key slide. There's just so many implications around that, so I can't emphasize enough how functions of operation management lead to great a competitive company, and who makes that happen is the managers. So management principles around these functions is absolutely key. So that's what you need to consider in this piece. Which brings me to the service profit chain. And what I encourage you to do is Google this, or go out into the internet and find out what it's all about. It's not it's not a very complicated concept, but what it does is establishes the relationships between profitability, customer loyalty, employee satisfaction, and employee loyalty and employee productivity. So it really kind of, it's a way of emphasizing each part of that. And I want to make the distinction between customer satisfaction and customer loyalty. Customer satisfaction is what we call in gambling table stakes. This is something you need to have in order to be competitive. But you may be keeping your customers satisfied, but they're still looking beyond you, beyond your business, to be able to find something that's of more value. So what you really want to do is you want to keep those customers. You want to retain those customers. And that's what customer loyalty is all about. And really that ties into a term called customer lifetime value. So it's one thing to have a customer come into a store and spend $20, but just think if you could keep that customer coming in and buying other things and upping the value of their purchases over their lifetime, customer lifetime value, they may bring in $20,000 of revenue to your business. So the service profit chain really is an enabler for customer lifetime value, and has all these elements of making the whole process work properly. So the basic principle of service profit chain theory is based on the fact that customer satisfaction starts with good staffing and treatment of one's own employees. So if you don't treat your employees properly, how do you expect them to be right there and have the customers back and be engaged to be able to wow them in terms of a customer service and keep them coming back because they like your people and they know that they're going to get treated right, and they know that it's a trusting relationship, that the customer is going to be looked after and well looked after and get value out of your organization. All right, so simply put, committed employees convey their satisfaction to the customer, and hence the chain of service profit is set in motion. So now I'll just show you the drawing around that, and then take a look at this. So what you do then is that you're investing in your employees, all right? And that provides an internal service quality because they're well trained, they feel good about working there, they have the skills that they need, and hence they're satisfied. When they're satisfied, they're loyal. You know, people leave their bosses, they don't leave their companies. So it comes down to solid management to be able to make those employees feel engaged, satisfied, and loyal to the organization. And once you have that, then you have employee productivity. So then what does that do? That provides external service quality because they're well trained, they feel good about the operation, they understand the goals of the organization, and guess what? 91% of North American employees don't really understand the connection of what they do in their work with the overall goals of the organization. 91%. That means there's only 9% of employees that get it. And here's where you come in. You know, you make that happen, and you make them understand that they are part of that shared vision, and so that you can achieve this external service quality. And then what does happen on the front end? The customers are satisfied, but then they keep coming back. And what does that do? That provides business growth, profitability, and so that you have more to be able to reinvest in your employees, and then you go through that cycle all over again. So it just feeds itself. So that's why I thought it would be really important for you to understand the service profit chain, and it's a blueprint for loyalty. And what does loyalty achieve? Loyalty achieves customer satisfaction, business growth, and business growth gives you profitability, and works that through to be able to give you the amount of returns that you can reinvest into your employees. Okay, so on that, I just want to give you a sense of now, you know, the slides that in Professor Power's presentation on topic 5. She makes the distinction between goods and services. And what you need to understand is that in Canada, we predominantly have services that add to our gross domestic product. We're a service nation, and you need to understand that, and understand that that goods, you know, they're tangible, they're a physical form. They can be stored in inventory, they can be produced independently of the customer. You know, you can work around delays, you can manage that. But in services, they're intangible, and they're experienced. And take a you know, an example of a landscaping company. They can't show the customer what it exactly looks like. So what do? They show pictures on their website. They show previous clients. They show testimonials. And they try to make that as tangible as possible. And then in the digital world, you know, you have customer trials. So many software companies will allow customers to trial their software for free for 30 to 90 days before they purchase. And that makes that service much more tangible. But you really need to understand that it's a different way of doing that. And trust is really key. And actually keeping tight with the customer during the process and keeping them engaged will provide more success for you. So that's key in goods versus services. Here's a bit about, you know, just to show you, you know, where Canada has gone in terms of the employment in services. You know, from 1950, you know, it was more on the manufacturing side, to now in today's years. I mean, look at the amount of services that's provided, and by the way, that translates into exports. And you should really know that Canada is an exporting nation. It's in the top 10 of world nations that export in terms of the percentage of GDP going to exports. So that's the crux of our economy, and understanding that, you'll understand where the opportunities are for you as a manager. Okay, so now I'm going to get you ready to complete the participation activities of 5A and 5B. And what are you going to do? You're going to land up producing a business process flow chart. And I'm going to ask you in the next slide, to work with your particular project group to do this. All right. And then once you get that done, you're going to you're going to need in 5B, you're going to be asked to do labor productivity calculations. And what you'll need to do with that is you have to make some assumptions when you're doing that. So state your assumptions so that maybe hourly rates and how many hours you worked in this. And what you're going to do in your group is you're going to build a gingerbread house. All right. So get ready for that. But I'm going to try to get you ready here in terms of providing the steps so it's logical on what you're going to do to be able to get to the outcomes required and the deliverables of 5A and 5B. Okay, so what I'm asking you to do is you work out 5A and 5B with the members of your self-enrolled assigned project groups, and you'll see that you're either in a project group A or B or C all the way up to T. So each member of the project group, though, must input the outcomes of 5A and 5B, even though you completed the answers as a group. And what I want to stress throughout this course is that all participation activities, because I'm measuring participation for this course, must be submitted by each individual, even though in many cases you work this out as a group. So everybody has to input participation activities 5A and 5B and all the other participation activities all the way into our topic 13 as well. Okay, so just so that you know that. All right, so let's get ready to do 5A and 5B. And the first thing I'm going to talk about transformations. Okay, so you're building this gingerbread house, and what is the transformation? Well, one is physical, right? You're manufacturing, you're making a gingerbread house. So you're going to take raw materials, you're going to make those into biscuits, or maybe you're going to buy your biscuits. You're going to build that piece. You're going to put it together with icing and decorations. So that's a physical transformation. Well, you're going to sell this gingerbread house. So now you have a locational transformation. Maybe you need to sell this to a distributor, or you build your own warehouse or whatever. And then another transformation is retail. Where's the customer? How are you going to exchange that gingerbread house with getting money from them to be able to do that. The others are maybe not so much, in terms of physiological or psychological, but be creative. Let me know, and then your creativity will add to your success in this project. And then there's always all kinds of informative communication, so that that a story around a product or a service always enhances its sales. A story around the product or service allows the customer to freely understand the use and how to use it and all those things. So that's another key transformation that you need to work into your process flow chart. Okay, so that's the first thing about transferring about that. And the next thing is that how do you add value? And I want to make a key statement as well, is that you're adding value into a product or service offering, but also take a look at you are your own corporation, and whether you work for yourself in a company or you work for an organization, you need to really understand that how you're adding value and what kind of value are you adding, and the better that you can define that and the better that you can validate it, the more successful you're going to be. So I just want to leave that with you as an aside to really think about. But value added is the difference between price of a product or service and the cost of producing it. So people, if you're working for an organization, they're going to pay you a certain wage. And what you need to consider is that you need to bring more value into the organization that far surpasses the wage that they're paying you. And the better that you can do that, the more successful that you can do that. And it applies in your own, if you're an entrepreneur and you're building your own business, what you're pulling out of that organization in terms of rewards, you need to add more to be able to sustain that business, to make it grow and to be successful. So the price is determined by what customers are willing to pay. And that's key, because sometimes customers see value that you don't even recognize, and that's a disadvantage for you. You really need to understand and query customers to really learn what values they see. And people are willing to pay more. And I know myself as a consumer, I'm always conscious about price, but I never step back from understanding that if this item that I'm going to buy, either product or service, if it's going to provide me more value, I will definitely pay more for it. And I've done this all my life, and that's what customers are all about. So you need to understand that piece. And sometimes it's just perceived value, or it's unrecognized value by the supplier. And value is added or created in different ways. It's not just price. It may be, well, here's an example. I actually sold textbooks, and I would go into homes to sell these textbooks. And in one case, I understood that the people that I was selling these textbooks to, the lady's father was a real war enthusiast and really was just a sponge trying to get information about wars and whatever. Well, guess what? I sold a whole book series on wartime, and I didn't know that, but I went in and I realized that even though the lady that bought the books, she had a perceived value for her father. And so that, you can see that value added is created in very different ways. Okay, so value added, additional features or economic value that a company adds to its products and services before offering them to customers. It helps companies attract more customers because that could give you a differential advantage. It's effectively the difference between a product's price to the consumers and the cost of producing it. And again, that value is in the customer's view, in the customer's mind, and value can be added in several different ways. So it may be just the brand name. I know that I buy a lot of Hitachi products. Why? Because I truly believe that the Hitachi brand is strong, and so that will swing my decisions sometimes. So there's different ways of securing value in terms of making it important to the customer. Okay, so here's the illustration that was put in your in your slide deck in topic 5, and here what it is. It's about, you have inputs and you have outputs. And what you're doing is you're transforming. So that's why we talked about transformations first, through operations to create these outputs that creates value for the customer. So that's why that's what we're talking about. So value add, the difference between the cost of inputs and the value price of the output. Okay, and the first thing that you're going to do in 5A is you're going to build a process output, an input process output process flow chart. And so that you're going to have inputs, right? You're going to put that through a process, where you have different controls and instructions and procedures and measurements and governance around that, how you manage that. And then you'll have enablers, resources, skills, knowledge, and that goes into this process to create something of value, be it a product or a service, which comes out as an output. So that's what your flow chart is going to look like. You'll see some examples that Professor Powers put in the presentation, but this is the essence of 5A, this activity. So here's the steps that I'd like you to kind of take to make it obvious as to what you have to do to complete 5A and 5B. So you're going to identify the transformations you're addressing to build and sell your gingerbread house. You're going to identify your inputs and outputs to the value add, and then you're going to map this process 5A. So that's the 5A output. Submit your team process flow diagram, and I'm going to show you, one of those diagrams. And then once you do that, inside of that process flow diagram, you have the steps that are put together to achieve that output. And then based on those steps, you're going to calculate your productivity calculation for team production. And then I'm going to show you these two slides that are in the presentation. But this is essentially what you're doing, and we'll get to those. But it's the steps. And what you're going to need to do is make some assumptions and state those assumptions. And in any business proposition or proposal, you always manage your assumptions, and you identify them right off the top in terms of putting your information together. And as a business, what businesses do is that once they make these assumptions to qualify their inputs, so to speak, they will go back to those assumptions on a regular basis and test them. And they may have to change them based on what happens in the environment. And that's that's how you stay current, because you may adjust or recalibrate your operation because the assumptions have changed. And now you have a renewed set of assumptions that you still have to test. And you keep on doing that. And that's why we do environmental scans externally and environmental scans internally. And that's why we talked about the McKinsey 7S process in topic 4. In those particular areas of the 7 S's, you go in and say, are things still the same? Do we still have the proper capabilities and skills to be able to generate our products and services that are still relevant with the customers? So that's key. So these are the 3 steps. Identify the transformations that are related to building this gingerbread house. Identify your inputs and outputs. Identify your value adds. And this gives you more information to be able to put your process together, your team flow process chart. And then the steps in that team flow diagram will provide you the information to make assumptions upon to be able to calculate the productivity. Okay, so that's what assessment 5A is in terms of the process flow diagram. And what are you doing? Now I'm just reiterating, what slides were in there. You identify your inputs and outputs, identify the value add, identify the types of transformations to be able to do that. And then Professor Powers gave you some ways of doing that piece. I'm not so interested in the details of the actual boxes and triangles. I'm interested in the steps that you need to. So, if you don't characterize this particular step for info from others, and it's a square box, I'm going to be okay with that. But it's the outcomes that I want you to focus on. And here's one for making macaroni and cheese. You can go through this step and see what they did, and you can see, where are the questions and where did they get information and those kind of things. And I just wanted to show you a piece that I worked on. As a consultant, I did a lot of business process improvement, and this is an absolute great activity to get people involved in. So in this particular piece, what I did was I worked with a company called Mac Hall Mobility, and what they do is they actually not only sell mobility products like wheelchairs and canes and whatever, but they go through a very rigorous process of qualifying their customers and analyzing what the customer's needs are to be able to adjust any kind of product that they sell to be able to make sure that they'll have the best use and the best customer satisfaction. And guess what? The best customer loyalty coming back and being an advocate for that organization. And the thing is this is a very successful retail operation. They have 3 retail operations in Ontario, and they make a great profit at it, and they're a very successful business that has been running for well over 20 years. All right, so mainly in process focus, which wasn't covered, in the main materials. But what these are called, these areas, they're called swim lanes. Okay, swim lanes. And what it is they're the various aspects of the operation. So I'll just take you through this quickly. Is that, you know, when the customer comes in, they sit down with that customer and find out what the customer goals are. So they essentially do a needs analysis, and that's where they're getting information to find out, okay, where, you know, where does the customer live? Does the customer live in a condo? Are there stairs mainly throughout their property? You know, do they have certain pains that you know, from a physical point of view, that they need to be aware of? All those kind of things. So that's a needs analysis. And then we go to the next swim lane, and then they do this individual assessment. And this is where, you know, they actually determine their cognitive functional ability. And so understand, you know, do they have the control, say, for a particular wheelchair, and is there any other add-on to that wheelchair that they could put in so that they could help provide success for that customer. And then they look at that customer environment. Like I said, you know, they assess where they're living, what you know, what kind of obstacles they have, how easy is it to enter their property from the street, all those kind of things. And then they get into product selection. And then there's a sequence of things where they look through the options and the trade-offs, and then, you know, their budget options. And then when they look at their budget options, they have someone in the organization that looks for assistant options. So here's something very important about business, you know, process flow diagrams, is that here we have a person that's a salesperson dealing with the customer, looking at budget options. And what that salesperson does now is hands off that once the budget options are determined, hands off that requirement to an administration person. So what does that mean? That means that the administration person that looks into the assistant options is an internal customer to the salesperson who figured out the budget options. And there should be an agreement, you know, a service agreement between the salesperson and that administration. And the more distinct and rigorous that agreement is, the better off that both are in terms of the salesperson completing their part of the trend, you know, of the operation, and giving the administration person the best outlook and the best preparation to have the tools to be able to do a better job. So that's, you know, in these sequential parts, that's really key. And then from those options, the purchase option will be determined, and then that patient will go into a fitting exercise where they'll do measurements and adjustments, and then they'll do a trial, and they'll do an in-store trial, and they'll do an out-of-store trial, like in their own home. And you can see that this is down, you know, this is a time element. So this is down the road, you know, when they've before they've actually finalized the purchase decision. You know, then there's delivery, there's in-store training, there's out-of-store training, and then there's a follow-up assessment, you know, where you'll get a technician to visit to do these things. And then at the end, there's a review and report referral. So this is a little more sophisticated than just doing a regular flow chart. And it's a preview of what you could be getting into, and a demonstration that putting together business flow charts is really, really important. And I've done this in part of my career where I looked after a service delivery process where we did business process improvement. And by actually mapping these process drawings and having the handoffs understood and the people involved in those handoffs, we were able to take out from 20% to 40% of the costs, making it more efficient, making, you know, increasing customer satisfaction, and ultimately increasing customer loyalty in the service delivery process. So I can't say enough about this piece. All right, so now let's move on. One thing is, this is just kind of a review, and again, this is not part of your requirements for testing, but it's to give you a sense of, you know, how to fulfill these business flow charts, especially under the you know, under the headings of business process improvement, or just building a process from scratch. And what you need to do is you need to analyze the customer journey map as a whole to really kind of get a sense of, how do you really learn about that customer? And this is an absolute other subject. I'm just going to show you, an illustration in the next slide, but you should be aware of it. And then you look at the green flags. Well, where is this process effective? You look at the red flags. Where's the process broken? And then, you have firsthand observations from your team, because it's the people that hand off to each other that could say, Jane will say, well, Josh, if you did this particular piece of activity a certain way, I could be a lot more effective and efficient doing my job. And that's where those conversations come in and those firsthand observations. Okay, so again, this is just, icing on the cake, so to speak, or icing on the gingerbread to kind of give you a sense of what's going on here. But I just wanted to introduce you to the customer journey map. So all customers go through a range of activity. First, they're aware of your product, and then they'll start considering it, and then they'll buy it, and then they'll get service from you, and here's where you create loyalty. So all these little dots here are contact points, where you're making a contact with that customer, and each one of those areas is you're creating moments of truth. So, if you sent them an email and they don't understand it, well, that moment of truth is, well, these people are confusing. Do I really want to deal with them in the future? If they go to your website and they can't get things done or navigate that website, that's a negative moment of truth. On the other hand, if you're tracking them through your website and you see where they're really wanting to go, and you have a bot that comes in and say, hey, I can help you get what you need, well, then that's a positive moment of truth. And so that you understand this in every way that you can meet a moment of truth for that customer. And oh, by the way, your business flow chart, really should track, this step process of what a customer goes through. Right? Okay, so just for your information, but I wanted you to be aware of that. So let's get back now to the participation topic 5B, where you need to calculate the team production, and so that now you have the steps mapped out in this process flow, so you know where you can make assumptions around the time that it takes to do this. And then you can make assumptions around the costs of the inputs to measure the cost of production. And then you can make some assumptions around the labor rate that you're going to charge. And then you can then calculate units of output per labor unit and value of output for value of labor, and calculate material productivity, so the value of output per value of materials. So you put assumptions on the icing sugar that you used, and maybe the biscuits that you bought or the biscuits that you made, and then at the end of the day you look at all the pricing of your inputs versus what you're going to charge for that particular gingerbread house. So that's what you need to do, and here's just an illustration of total measure of productivity again, and this is normally done in dollars. And then what I've done is I've given you some additional information in case something might be missing inside of the slide deck that you're working through in topic 5. So here's some information that I hope helps. So if you take a look at total productivity, is calculated by dividing the outputs produced by a company by the inputs used in its production process. So the common inputs are labor in dollars, labor hours, capital, the investment. Maybe you invested in an oven. Maybe you invested in pans and stuff, so that you needed to spend some capital. And then the natural resources. Well, those natural resources are the ingredients in those pieces. And then you look at the number of gingerbread houses that you produced and what that means in sales, and now you can measure total productivity. Here's just a little more definitions around productivity. When they talk about multi-productivity factor, MFP, it's a measure of economic performance that compares the amount of output to the amount of combined inputs used to produce that output. So they're, what they're doing is they might take a look at all the bakeries in Canada and look at the multi-factor productivity of bread overall. So that's how you do that. And then it reflects the overall efficiency which labor and capital inputs are used together in the production process. And changes in the multi-factor productivity, that's where you come in. This is what we're talking about. We're talking about management principles. So if you're very effective in your management practices in terms of managing brand and organizational change and general knowledge, you're going to impact the efficiency and the effectiveness of the process and ultimately impact the productivity of that process. So that's why I'm bringing this to your attention. And then we look at partial productivity. Well, that measures the use of one class of inputs or factors, but not multiple factors. So that you can, in your case, you're looking at the factors that are related to labor, material capital, and capital. All right, so that's where that's going. And here's a further definition that's in the slide deck that you can look at. All right, so you're gonna calculate this, and that's the activities, the participation activities for 5A and 5B. And now I'm going to switch gears a little bit, and I'm going to talk to you about a little bit that were in the slides to show you really how important this is. And you're right in the sweet zone for looking at new opportunities, given you coming out of this program and looking at management opportunities because of where artificial intelligence is going, where we are in terms of automation and robotics. And the thing is that there's just so many opportunities out there that I think you should be aware of and start tracking already, even before you get out, so that you get a sense of where do you fit in these opportunities. Okay, so emerging technologies, look at all the components of emerging technologies in management: robotics, artificial intelligence, machine learning, augmented reality, virtual reality. And the thing is, in terms of augmented reality, these are especially techniques in services where it could provide more tangibility to a service offering to a customer, so that you can, if you can adapt these measures to be able to show them what they look like. And here's an example. When I first graduated out of college, I needed glasses. All right. And I was blind as a bat. Right now I have a laser technology that's helped me, but I was blind as a bat. So if I wanted to see what I looked like in a different set of glasses, I would put the glasses frame on my head and with no lenses and look in a mirror. But guess what? I couldn't see myself adequately. Now with AI. You can get a picture taken of you, and then you could see yourself of what you look like in every different kinds of glasses. That's a form of artificial intelligence and virtual reality that we have now to be able to make services more tangible. So there's all these aspects of this technology that can help us be better managers, is what I'm trying to say. And so that, take a good, strong look at this. And look at, this article here. It talks about the Executive Guide to Emerging Business Technologies, so that you know what's coming, and you'll know what will be coming soon and what's still in the, in the hopper, so to speak, or still in the pipeline that's going to be coming out, so that you could really kind of get a sense of, hey, I'm getting ready for this, and look at these things. So, robotic process automation, cloud computing just keeps on getting more and more advanced. Virtual and reality, social media analytics. In my day, many years back, marketing was all about trying to predict, what the customer would do. In today's world, we have bots that we could put into social media, and they actually measure people's comments around. They've tried different things and you get a quicker sense of if your product's going to make it and how to adjust and how to make an augmented product from what you have initially. So there's all kinds of opportunity there that this technology is going to provide you in terms of management capability. You know, wearables in today's world, and I was on a board of directors called Future Health Services, and what it was, it was a platform that was developed to do remote health, especially in the north where travel is really important to get to a specialist. Well, we looked at a wearable that was created in Quebec, and what the patient would put that on, and it had transducers inside of that wearable that could measure heartbeat, that could measure blood pressure, that could measure different aspects of health, and transmit that real time to a collector, and a doctor could not only come up on a video, but have all the vitals in front of them to be able to make a diagnosis. I mean, that's where we're heading. I mean, there's all kinds of opportunity there, you know, in terms of augmented analytics. Now, blockchain. Take a look at blockchain. Like, global trading is increasing in leaps and bounds. Even though it got set back during the pandemic and you know, trade wars with the U.S. and China, but blockchain is basically crypto technology that not only allows transfers of wealth in terms of cryptocurrencies, but can actually provide information that's protected, so that you have real-time information between each part of the transmission of a good from say France to Australia or India, and each time get signals around, you know, is the refrigeration unit in the compartment working all the way through. When, you know, if you take global logistics or global supply chain logistics, you know, there's handoffs where the money should get transferred and the goods should be assessed as, yeah, they're in good shape. All this happens with blockchain. This is a new technology that really IBM and Mertz have been designing, you know, from 3-4 years ago, and it's just getting better. So those are all the things that, you know, that really are so much an opportunity for you to investigate going through. So what I wanted to show you is that, you know, here this level of automation really says it all in terms of, you know, if you want to, and it kind of mirrors what we're looking at in terms of the types of production in today's world, but with automation it adds that extra level, so that if you want to produce high quantities, all right, with a low variety, you know, you'd be into fixed automation. So look at these continuums in terms of production flexibility and production capacity. So if you want more capacity, you're kind of in this quadrant. If you want more flexibility, you're in this quadrant, and then understand the various trade-offs across automation. And this really gives you a great map to be able to analyze how you can automate your processes in your business and what your trade-offs can be. So this is a key graph to really understand, you know. So take a look at computer integrated manufacturing and look at, you know, how you can drop your inventory. You know, I told you about inventory makes up 35% to 65% of the overall unit cost. I mean, if you could go to just in time because you have the right level of automation to be able to deal with scheduling to get to the customer, then you've got a winning combination to create competitive advantage. So those are the key things that you should be looking at. Here's one effort that's going on in Canada right now that I wanted you to know about, and it's next generation manufacturing. This is the link, all right? www.ngen.ca. And this is what they do. They bring advanced manufacturing and technology to drive digital transformation. So they're a nonprofit and they're driving technology, and you should understand, you know, what the capabilities are. Guess what? There's a lot of community colleges that are partners with NGen that are starting to create these specialized training in advanced manufacturing that will give you the management edge, as you go into your career. And this is one of the inputs I tried to make to Red Deer Polytechnic's strategic plan. And so I've kind of put this in, and as I inputted to the strategic plan that came out, just the preface to that plan that came out for input, and I really think this is a really significant piece, and I'm not quite sure how much involved that Red Deer Polytechnic is right now, but I'm certainly recommending that they do more. But here, if you go right to this particular URL, you'll be able to register for their newsletter. And I'd strongly advise you to do that, because you're going to start seeing what's coming to the fore and what kind of opportunities there are for you as future managers. And again, I talked about Flipboard. I'd strongly recommend that you download Flipboard into your smart phone and put in the subject matter content that you want to see on a regular basis. And Malcolm Gladwell says, if you spend 10,000 hours in a particular area of specialty or discipline, you become an expert. And I think I've mentioned this before, is that if you're in the top 20% of your category in terms of what you do as a business practitioner, you're always going to have work. So between staying up to speed with what's going on and all these changes in AI and robotics and things, and understanding what's coming on board through Flipboard, it'll really prepare you for your future. Okay, so here's just an example. So I did a business assessment for federal development. They asked me to go into a business and help them take a look at how their business is laid out and how they can improve their profitability and those kind of things. Well, this is what happened. They actually serendipitously they bid on a beam press, and it was just they got it for like peanuts. You would spend hundreds of $1,000s to buy a beam press, and they got it for just a few $1,000s because it was being cleared out of an area in Calgary. And guess what? Now that they've used this, they're producing stamped metal products for such a small price. It's saving their business. Their margins are just incredibly high. They don't have to manage a lot of inventory because they could get the thing out the door, virtually days after a customer orders certain stamped products. So it's just a great example of what automation can do for you, especially if it's computer controlled automation. So, and this is a computer. So what they do is they basically have one technician that looks at the product requirement, sets up the programming to be able to produce that, and then they have a low-skilled operator that runs this and bangs out these products, in hundreds a day. So it's a great piece that really has saved their bacon, right? They're making good money now, and it's sort of stabilized their income stream for the business itself. All right, and then just an indication of what's going on. Look at what Canada is doing. They're investing in electric vehicle industry. They're looking at a battery plant in Quebec that's going to have the Northvolt Swedish battery giant will come in and build a plant that will cover 300 football fields, and this is going to be done by the end of 26. And it's just going to be an incredible opportunity, in advanced computer-controlled operations, as well as getting into the right trend of demand for electric vehicles and working towards sustainability, in the world. So that's what I have for you today, and I'm hoping that you'll be able to, get through the participation activities of 5A and 5B, work in your groups, your project groups, to be able to do that. Everyone is to input, no matter if you work in your group with 2 other people. you create 5A and 5B, but each one of you has to input the answers to me, all right, and go from there, because I want to keep the participation at the best level we possibly can. And again, if you have any questions, just email me, and if your questions have an impact on your colleagues, I will put the answers, not only will I answer you by email, but I will put the answers on the announcements in Blackboard. Okay, so and good luck on the test, and we'll catch you next week.